Okay. Uh, Good morning and welcome to this particular session. Please confirm in the chat box that you can hear me very clearly. You can also see me also. Please confirm. Thank you, Adauko. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome to this particular session. We shall be examining how we can build an inclusive workplace culture. Interestingly, the issue of inclusiveness in the work environment has been a serious concern in various climes, not just here in Nigeria. In various environments, there has been concerns about issues of diversity amongst the gender, issues of diversity about culture, cultural background, educational background, as the case may be. There is concerns about personal preference, as the case may be. And this consistently drives the way we treat others in the work environment. My name is Joel Omike. I will be anchoring this conversation from P4PE Institute. We are a management consulting focused on business growth, organizational development, HR transformation, analytics, and AI. We've been around for the past 13 years, engaging several organizations in various ways to help them achieve proper configuration of their organization in order to deliver the most value. Thank you. I, for one, has had an interesting career in the past 23, 24 years, helping executives to grow and build their institution and also to achieve great success in various areas. I am a trusted advisor to various institutions and also provide, as much as possible, executive coaching to individuals who are growing their career. So our conversation today is around inclusiveness. So an inclusive approach focuses on adapting and also improving your current services and your organizational practices so that they are welcoming, they are safe, and they are accessible for all at that point in time. In our discussion today, we shall be looking at what exactly is inclusion. How does diversity in the workplace support in one way or the other how inclusiveness thrives within the organization? We'll look at a few examples of how organizations have been able to embrace gender diversity and then use that as a leverage in order to deliver some bespoke results within the organization. And then we can see examples, some of the steps you can take in order to become more inclusive in your own organization, how to move the needle forward in order to achieve success in those areas. So I'm going to ask you what your expectations are. What exactly are your expectations from our discussion today? So you can share on the chat box. I will allow for a minute. If you can share on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and share briefly. I'll just allow 1 minute for us to have this conversation. What is your expectations from our discussion today? Any key areas around our discussion on inclusiveness you'd like to say? Thank you for responding. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you very much. So Adaku says a key consultant, a DEI consultant already, and is looking at the Nigerian perspective or context in this conversation. Beautiful, yes. Thank you. Okay, so as we share, hopefully at the end of this particular session, okay, AK says the world of work is changing and moving towards DEI. I want to learn how to apply this at my place of work. Thank you. P4PE says, I want to know more about how to handle trends and changes, especially in our African context. Thank you. Again, emphasis on Nigeria, on Africa, on contextualizing the discussion. For one thing, in this conversation, we shall be aware of some of these particular issues and diversity in manufacturing concern. I'm going to build my case studies around that particular area. And you can also extrapolate that to various industries as the case is. We shall also be looking at what knowledge we need to have in order to be able to ensure that the initiatives that other organizations have done, how they did it, how they've encouraged inclusion and diversity in their own environment, so you can also apply those in your own space. And then finally, I hope at the end of the day, I will inspire you to be able to some changes in your own community, in your own work environment, in order to drive some of this particular process as much as possible. Okay, so that's fine. So let's get into our first discussion. So let's look at inclusion and diversity. Let's look at what inclusion and diversity means and how that drives a few things in our environment. Now, let's look at this particular quote from Tessameas. It says that often women don't speak up and say they want the next job. I would say this was true for me early in my career, but when I did, it always led to the next opportunity. Women need to put their hand up and express their interests. We should take a risk if it feels like a stretch. It's going to be a better learning opportunity and a more rewarding accomplishment. If you listen closely to what Maya is saying, it's saying that sometimes opportunity does not come to you if you don't stretch out for those particular opportunities, if you do not ask for those particular opportunities. And this context of her conversation is from the gender side, saying that on the average, women do not consciously reach out. They do aspire. Please don't confuse it with aspiration. They aspire to move up. However, they don't ask for those particular positions. Another research supports what she says, where it says that most women believe that what is their own will come to them, as the case is. And so you need to consciously rise up and walk into whatever office or whatever scenario that is required and make demand. And if you look at what she said here, she says that in her own case, she noticed that when she did ask, those opportunities showed up. So this is saying that you must be deliberate in order to assess opportunities that might exist within your workspace. Now, in our own environment, in our own culture, you know that it is not our culture originally for the average female to speak up, as the case may be. And in the work environment also, there are certain work environments that still exist today that do not encourage or frown at women who are pushy in their career, trying to move forward, as the case may be. In fact, in some cases, they consciously sideline those women. Now, what's the difference between inclusion and diversity? Inclusion is about all of us. It's about you. It's about me. All right? It's about demonstrating a caring culture that strives for equity Please note, inclusion is not equality. It strikes for equity and embraces, respects, and values what is different in you and what is different in me. And will bring those differences to the table so we can benefit from it. Diversity, on the other hand, is about each of us. What makes you different? What makes me different? What makes you unique? And what makes me unique? Your experiences you've had that I have not had. The background you came from that I do not come from at that point in time. The qualities and characteristics that make up one individual that the next individual does not have those particular qualities, as the case may be. So all those differences, uniqueness, qualities, experiences, characteristics brought together is called diversity. So in a basic physical environment, whether you have someone who is tall or someone who is short, you have someone who is on the big side or someone who is very, very slim. You have someone from a particular tribe or someone from another tribe. Someone who had his first degree in the Western world and someone who had his first degree in the local environment here. Each of these are called diversity. And we are completely different in those areas. So what is all this talk about inclusion and diversity? It just ensures that each of us are completely different from where we're coming from. And inclusion is now saying we must respect, we must recognize those particular differences and bring them on board for us to use successfully. So inclusion is all about welcoming, safe, and accessible for all of us. If an environment is inclusive, then the diversity of each individual is respected, is acknowledged, and is put to use within that institution at that point in time. Diversity recognizes, beds into our organization, and also addresses any barriers to inclusion so we can all continue to work on it regularly. Then there's what we call systemic discrimination, which can create and sustain privileges for some people, while it creates and sustains disadvantage for some others within the organization. An example, an institution that says that all our call centers, our customer service executives must be women only, must be tall, must be light complexion, as the case may be, is instantly a platform for discrimination. And so if two persons are hired into that particular organization, just because I do not have those physical features, I do not get the opportunity to work in the customer service center. Perhaps the customer service center is a route where people are promoted often because that particular center is important to the organization. And guess what? So because I am not light-skinned, I am not tall, I am not, I'm not a female, if I may use those expressions. So my career path is a different tone and perhaps a slower path. That is why we say when you have a systemic discrimination, that is activities and things we do in the organization, consciously or unconsciously, in such a way that some people are advantaged, you'll notice that those individuals will privilege from it and other persons will become disadvantaged from it at that point in time. So when it comes to building your blocks, right, there are different things you must consider with respect to building the block of inclusion within the organization. So when we say the organization needs to build its culture of inclusiveness, we expect the organization to pay attention to these three things: equity, diversity, and inclusion. Let's take some time and talk about these three. What is equity? Would you like to share? What is equity? Would you like to share in the chat box? What is equity? Feel free to use any of the word search documents. I'm not saying equality. Equity. What is equity? What will you say equity is? Yes. What is equity? Okay, so as you share, equity is fairness. There's an expression that says what is good for the goose is good for the ganders. But that's not equity. That's trying to be equal, right? Charity says equity is taking into consideration one's abilities, one's inabilities in every given situation, and hence the decision you take at that point in time, whatever you ascribe to that individual, must be to maximize the person's abilities and downplay the person's inabilities. Thank you very much from that angle, as the case is. Equity is about recognizing that disadvantages exist. You must recognize the fact that because she is a female, there are certain disadvantages around her. Because he comes from a particular tribe, there are certain disadvantages around that particular tribe. You must recognize the existence of those disadvantages. However, in that recognition, you find solutions to the barriers of those disadvantages, as the case may be. You find solutions to the behaviors and attitudes that might create unequal situation and outcomes for them at that point in time. So you see, equity says there must be recognition of disadvantage. However, quickly, there is a finding of solution to address those particular differences. So in order for us to be fair, since we say equity is fairness, we must treat people differently. So the expression, what is good for the goose is good for the ganders, is not equity and is anti-DEI, as the case may be. People must be treated differently according to the advantage or disadvantage that they've been bestowed with at that point in time. So equity doesn't mean disadvantaging anybody, putting anyone in the wrong situation or wrong scenario at that point in time, as the case may be. No, that's not equity, as the case is. It's about making the field a level playing field for various individuals to be able to play in at that point in time. Thank you, Adako. It levels the playing field. Equity ensures that everybody has a platform on which he can play on at that point in time to be able to achieve results. And so that's what equity entails when it comes to building a culture of inclusiveness within your organization. The second one is diversity. Diversity encompasses various characteristics that are used to differentiate you from me, differentiate each employee within the organization. These characteristics are across all of us. It might be our individual experience, as the case is. I grew up in the city, so my experience is different. Another person grew up in a mega city, so her experience is different. The other individual grew up from a township or a village, so the experience is completely different. And these experiences affect the way I see the world. So the person who grew up in a mega city appears to be more exposed to the world of work than I that grew up in a village. So you recognize that diversity. Diversity is also the self-identity. Please note, self-identity refers to how I like to be identified. For example, the cap I wear is my brand. Another person, the hairstyle, whether the person has a dreadlock, the person has a long hair, the person has a short hair, or the person has skin cut his hair at that point in time. That is called self-identity, including sexual orientation. Those are self-identity. There is also the way that other people identify us, which, for example, tribe, religion, right? Professional background. Those are characteristics that are pinned on us because the world has defined those kind of things at that point in time. Now, these characteristics or these attributes define who we are. They shape who we are. When you meet a lawyer, there's a way a lawyer speaks. When you meet an accountant, there's a way an accountant speaks. So it defines who they are. When you meet someone from a particular tribe, there's an intonation, there's a way that individual engages and has conversations also at that point in time. So these things shape the way we are, who we are, the way we engage, and things like that. And guess what? It also shapes what is important to us. So we may be in the same work environment, but your aspirations are different from my own aspiration. I might be aspiring for job security, but you are aspiring to the apex of the organization at that point in time. You want to be a manager. I want to be a professional within my profession, as the case may be. So we are defined. Diversity defines us by those particular methods. So you see, we can identify with multiple characteristics. In any environment you come with, instantly see different people. And don't label people poorly or wrongly, as the case is. Here are some of the characteristics I'm talking about when it comes to diversity. Your beliefs, your belief around the end of life, your life experiences, your ideologies, your temperament, your age, your family role, your wife, your mother, your husband, your father, right? You're the breadwinner, your mental health, your gender identity, your language, your health, your income, your physical appearance. There are different ways in which we identify and define ourselves. And the fact that these characteristics are defined like you see it on this slide, it does not mean that each characteristic is standalone. In fact, some of these characteristics overlap. You can have someone who is advancing in age, who is a Muslim. So you have old man, Muslim. You can have someone who is young, so he's a youth, a millennial, a Gen Z or a Gen Y, who is a Muslim at that point. So you see that diversity characteristics can overlap in various areas within that particular individual. I'm talking about the overlap in this case. Here are some overlaps. If I bring all those things I showed on the screen, I can overlap them like this. So you can see the way all of them clusters together and overlaps at that point in time. And these are issues of diversity. So understanding how diverse your organization is, the characteristics that intersect all of them can guide us towards building an inclusive workplace culture for your organization. Now, the third part of this definition is inclusion. So inclusion is the positive action. Take notes. Inclusion is action. You must do something to say before you say you've become inclusive. The positive action you take in order to help everyone within the organization to be represented in various areas, whether it is at leadership level, at promotion level, at recruitment level, at opportunities that are shared within the organization. You take action to ensure that everyone has access. So inclusion is where environments are welcoming. People feel comfortable to be themselves, to be who they are, without being judged, without being stereotyped, as the case may be. And they are empowered to continue to do great things within those environments. So creating inclusive environments means that you must address power shortages and privilege imbalances within the organization. If there are certain individuals, because of their diversity, they have access to power than others, you must consciously do something to address it. If because of my diverse background or characteristics, there is an imbalance in my access to privilege, then the organization should do something to address it at that point in time in order to achieve it. So thank you, Charity. Inclusion goes beyond talking. It's actually doing. So it's not enough to say we are an inclusive organization here. Remember the slide here says positive action. You must do something in order to see that you're inclusive at that point in time. Some organizations show inclusiveness by posting on social media. They demonstrate it in various things that they do. They do some campaign periodically in order to encourage people from various backgrounds at that point in time. Why is it so important for us to consider this issue of inclusiveness? First, legally, there are laws that insist that we must be inclusive. And there are laws about healthcare, disability, racial discrimination, sex discrimination, commission, equal opportunity from various countries. Is in US, is in UK, is in Australia, is in Canada, is in Nigeria. There are laws that insist that we should be inclusive. Second, it is only morally right. It improves the quality of life. It contributes to a greater good within the work environment, within the society at that point in time. Third, socially speaking, it is only fair to be inclusive. It is just, it is respectful, as the case may be at that point in time. Then nationally, there are various approaches that government takes in order to ensure inclusiveness in the environment. Like the Department of Health, there is also the Department for the Ministry for Disabled Individuals in our environment, as the case may be, and various committees that you find here and there in order to ensure that this inclusiveness does happen. Okay, we'll come to that. All right. Then organizational development also, once you are inclusive, it helps the organization to grow, to be better, to innovate, right? To be more productive. There is more satisfaction. People are happier within that particular environment. All right. People team better when you have inclusiveness at that point in time. And then the reputation of the organization is much, much stronger as it reduces risk and compliance progress about that. Then globally, there are various institutions, NGOs that continue to push the agenda for inclusion, as the case is, from World Health Organization to various sustainable to the NDG goals, SDG goals that you have globally. All of these insist inclusiveness within the organization. So in summary of what we've said so far, inclusive culture elements are: you must be diverse, and then you must be inclusive. There must be a sense of belonging by the team. There must be respect shown for everyone. There must be fairness or equity, as the case may be, and must have a sense of fulfillment working in that particular environment. So these elements of inclusive culture should be tailored to your own organization, as the case may be at that point in time. Okay, so to emphasize what we've mentioned here in terms of building a culture of inclusiveness, I'm going to play you a 7-8 minutes video, all right? And I'd like you to watch this video and take a look at which areas of this particular video helps you to understand why it's important for us to have inclusive culture. Interestingly, this video is from Pixar. So they put up a video together on some of the life things that has happened to them in their environment in order to ensure that they're able to achieve these results in this area. I'm going to play straight from YouTube. I hope it is clear and the video allows us to see it very well. Let me share audio. I'm not sure I'm sharing audio. Let me share sound. About the experience, what do you think? What experience do you think that Pearl had I mean, is this the kind of experience you see in organizations today? Are they real? What do you think? Share your views and opinion. What do you think? What do you think about the culture in this workplace? The initial culture to what it eventually became. Say the workplace is very male-dominated environment. Very true. Adaku says, Pearl's opinions often got ignored. She was expected to fit in with the men and behave masculine. She practically lost her authentic self. Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, she became like one of them, right? Good. Initially, it was discriminating. Very, very discriminating. Thank you. Yes, what else? What did you notice? What made the environment change? Let's start from there. What made the environment change? Yes, thank you, Kemi. What led to change in that particular environment? What do you think? Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. She decided to join them, like how they look like. Yes, that's true. That's what she did initially. But the change happened when she decided to be different. She decided to go back to her old self. Did you notice she went back to the new lady that just joined them and welcomed that particular individual? Inclusiveness. Remember, I said positive action. She took positive action to welcome that individual, and gradually the other ones gradually started changing. And eventually, in the last picture of the video, it was clear that everyone in the organization appears to have welcomed the diversity at that point in time. So it's the same thing. The same thing you should also consider. Do you feel your organization has created a gender diverse work environment? Okay, there's a hand up. Thank you. Eke, you can speak.
Okay, hi. Sorry, good afternoon. Oh, sorry, good morning. So I'm just thinking, I'm just like playing the other side. You know, sometimes when people are different, you kind of don't want to acknowledge, maybe you don't want to be seen as being discriminatory. So you don't want to acknowledge that they are different. And so you try to want, you know, you want the person to behave the way you do so that you don't, I don't know, you know the person is, so like, for example, someone maybe has some kind of disability, you don't want to look like, you don't want to give the person preferential treatment because in your head you are being discriminatory, and so you unconsciously, you know, kind of like expect the person to be like you. Like, I mean, you need to change, you need to be like us. I know you're not like us, but you want the person to be like you. And so there's that unconscious discrimination and everything, because you're believing that if you show care, it's like you're discriminating, but unconsciously, by expecting that person to be like you, rise up to the occasion, you are discriminating and not.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, this happens sometimes when you know that you don't want to treat the person differently, but then again, you're constrained because you're looking at the person's limitations and things like that. And sometimes the person also feels like a fish out of water. The person feels embarrassed, right? And in some cases, you also feel embarrassed. And sometimes your colleagues look at you, and the way they look at you, they wonder if something is wrong with you, so to speak. And this makes us to tend to just follow through, follow like others and behave like others at that point in time. I think it is wise from what we've seen that we can be the difference. Pearl was the difference. Initially, the way they treated her was also the way she and the other individuals, male individuals, treated the last employee that joined. I mean, the new employee that joined at that point in time. But she paused and came back and decided to be different. So these things sometimes require some measure of consciousness on our part for us to be able to deal with it and get it off the looks at that point in time. So thank you. So from the video, it's clear that the inclusion, we need to find ways in order to create a balance within the environment. And I'm going to use gender as a case study for the rest of our conversation. Okay, so do we feel that our organization is balanced in the way they handle things? Let's just look at a few statistics. This was taken from a Canadian environment where they said 1 out of 3 said that their male-centric workplace culture is what they like least about working. The fact that the environment is male-centric. And most office environments are male-dominated. Either male-dominated in terms of physical number of males working in that area, or they are male-dominated in terms of ideology and how things are done in that area. The second statistic says half of female employees believe that they must work harder in order to prove themselves. And sometimes you hear some men talking about, she has tried. Let's give it to her, she has tried. Do we say the same thing about our male individuals when we are promoting them or giving them opportunity? Do we say they have tried? So that then means that our females who do not try by behaving and looking like us, so to speak, will not get those opportunities at that point in time. It also says that more than 1 out of 3 females see a promotion bias that favors men. And interestingly, the case is so, especially when most managerial positions are dominated by men. There's a tendency for them to align with their fellow male, so to speak. And so opportunities are granted to those individuals more. And there are sometimes when I've actually had a manager says that, no, a lady cannot occupy that position. She will not have the strength to do what needs to be done in that particular position, as the case is. I've also had a CFO say that he doesn't want a female in his team, right? Again, and he was trying to justify it, that they usually work very late and work hard in this particular environment, that their females may not be able to work hard and work late, as the case is. Then the last statistic says 1 out of 4 of those surveyed have quit their job because of sexism or discrimination. These are sad statistics, very, very sad statistics. So based on personal experiences, are these figures surprising? What do you think? Maybe someone has spoken to you, you've seen it happen before. Are these figures surprising? Do they surprise you that they are happening today? For example, the statistics that say 60% of companies feel that they face a labor shortage. And they point out that if fewer females are looking to get into work, then companies are essentially only picking about half the talent. So if most females are not looking out for those kind of positions, that means we have limited talents in which we can choose from in order to advance the work we're doing at that point in time. Yes.
So, sorry, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the figures are not surprising. Even I think I'm unconsciously discriminatory towards women. And this is the reason. I'm not saying that, and this is the reason. I work in I work in a unit where I need people to be dogged. I need people to be very hardworking and stuff. And I think I've built myself to that point that I can, want to compete with a man and say, yes, if you can do it, I can do it. And so when I'm recruiting, unconsciously, I kind of tilt towards the guys because I need someone that, I can call you up at 12 midnight and your husband will not be complaining because you are the man. So you will pick up the phone. So that it's something I'm trying to change. Like my leadership team, the people that make up my leadership team, I'm the only, we are in a leadership, I'm the only female. All the rest are male. And I don't know if it's by design, but I think I unconsciously did that. Because when I'm talking to a lady, I'm like, will this one be able to do this work that we are doing here? And I mean, it's happened. It's not surprising.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Absolutely. Last weekend on Saturday, I was in a management strategy retreat for a particular organization. And they had about 52 people in attendance in that particular session of their senior management, from the MD down to the 52nd person within the organization in terms of seniority. And guess what? There are only 5 females. 5 out of 52. That's like 10 in 1. Out of every 10, 1 female, as the case may be. And in one of the conversations we had, we simply say that we seriously need to look at our diversity issue within this organization. Again, yesterday we were in another session where we're reviewing some things for an engineering firm. And we're meeting with them and they are all managers in the engineering environment. I was like, only 1 female out of 14 people inside there, 1 female. Again, the issue of gender imbalance in Nigeria is super real. You can't hide it. It's super real, right? And even some of our females who have broken the glass ceiling and been privileged to get to the top or some of those managerial positions, either consciously or unconsciously also stereotype our females, as the case may be, as that they can't do it, they won't be able to do it, it will be too much for them, I'd rather prefer a male figure, as the case may be at that point in time. These are constraints, real constraints that we're seeing at this point in time. What are some of these implications? Yes, Adako, you can speak.
Hi, Joel. Good morning, and thank you so much for this awesome session so far. So I may be jumping ahead, but there's some things that get me. And if you notice, when you asked us what we were trying to expect, I was particular about the Nigerian context. So I do a lot of DEI work in Ireland and in UK, and I recently moved back to Nigeria. And it's, for me, it's so painful to do the work. And I hear you share stories around, oh, this is what you experienced with the retreat. And our sister here, Eke, is saying the same thing that even see sometimes unconsciously. So I see these things are happening, but I may be jumping ahead, but just before you round up, I want to know, what are you telling these companies? What are they doing to be like Pearl? What are those little things that we can be doing to let change happen? I have been curious about the Nigerian space and the DEI space for years. But the data is not changing. Nothing is shifting. So it becomes like a talk show. If you notice, I said that diversity without inclusion is tokenism. We keep talk. You put a woman up there and she becomes part of the problem. So I just want you to, at the end, maybe sometime, or maybe we can take this conversation elsewhere, because I'm very action-minded. I'm sick and tired of hearing, oh, sure, this is how it is in Nigeria. Oh, the men are dominating. What are we doing? What are we doing in our spaces? So this is really what I just wanted to quickly talk about. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Eke, you want to quickly say something?
Yes. So yes, Adaku. Yeah. So it happens, but there are some organizations that are actively taking deliberate steps to work towards that. I've worked in 2 organizations. This one I'm working in as well. Every meeting, we have a meeting where every time we are looking at the data, like how many people do we, our management cadre, what is the split? And so we try to do deliberate recruitment into bringing, by the time I left my former place of work, I think we had gotten to 47, 50 something, as in that was very good and all that. But unfortunately, a female retired, so we're back at, 60 something and all that. But I think organizations, and even my organization now, particularly, we are very deliberate. We are going out there to try to see how we can balance that ratio, especially in the management cadre. In management cadre, let's try and see how we can balance that. But to be honest, it's going to be lopsided for some time till we get it right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So one thing that a few organizations who have become conscious about this concern, one thing that they've started doing is awareness, right? Because awareness first at the executive level, awareness at a practice and system level, then awareness at the female gender level to help them understand that such acts are generally unacceptable, that they should speak out or aspire to be involved in various areas. So there are awareness going on in various institutions. While a couple of institutions have braved the tape beyond awareness to actually begin to change their policies, their practices to reflect consciously about these particular things in question. Again, the journey is very, very far, right? The imbalance is still heavy within our environment. Give them a couple of years with serious campaigns and interventions in various areas, we might see some difference. But you do know that the case that we are discussing is also cultural beyond the office environment, is an issue that permeates the Nigerian social system, so to speak. Sociologically, we are wired that way as the case is. And so we are trying to untangle that wire. And that untangling is not happening at the social level. It is currently only happening at the work environment and the youths who are being exposed to foreign media and foreign information. So they are beginning to question and disagree with some of the practices we do at this point in time. It's still a journey, and we'll sure get to that place. So in wrapping up our conversation, here are some concerns and how we can become more inclusive and diverse and how it affects our businesses. From a talent point of view, many organizations predict that talent gap will continue to exist and grow in the next 5 years. So if we can increase the diversity of the talent pool that we hire from, so we hire more of both the male, the female, the short, the tall, the fair, the dark skin, the bald hair, any of them, if we expand that pool, because usually sometimes when we come for an interview panel and a candidate just walks in, the first thing we evaluate is the candidate's look. And from that evaluation, which perhaps is unrelated to the job, at that point in time, we have said yes or no to conversations for that.
It's 12 o'clock.
And so issues of diversity, we need to sort it out at that particular level. The second concern is the issue of performance. People tend to perform better and more productively in environments where they are their authentic self, they are themselves, so to speak. They don't need to spend time and energy trying to be like the black men we saw in the video, right? Changing your suits, changing your behavior, changing your look, changing the way you speak, your jokes and everything, just to conform. At the end of the day, it wears you out. It drains you. We need to look at not making our team members, forcing them to conform. This may need our HR team to consciously look into clusters within the organization, look at the cliques that exist in the organization, and see if they can break down a few of these and ensure that there is nothing too strong in such a way that it denies people from being who they want to be. Then decision-making amongst our executives. In order for us to innovate, we need to avoid group thinking. We need to bring together all the unique and diverse ideas and various perspectives that can help us to drive innovation and decision-making within the organization. And from a cultural point of view, we may need to go back to the family level and begin to create that impression, that information, and help everybody to understand that those values and purpose of the organization must remain strong. So having a strong set of values can help us to move forward. It's also time for organizations to revisit their corporate values and see if there are certain corporate values that unconsciously, those values in themselves create an environment that is not inclusive and prevents us from being able to move forward. Okay. So for your strategic imperatives, in order to improve the gender female folks, sometimes there's need for us to go all the way down back to school. One, make sure there are role models. Role models of, if you are trying to create a balance based on gender, then look at our females who can be role models, who are up there, who can share stories, who can guide the other individuals down the line to ensure that they are able to take up the mantle and do the same thing. The second one is exposure to opportunities, to facilities in various areas. The third one is to encourage the youths, the younger ones, to go into the STEM fields. Because sometimes there are certain things that says this course is not for men, is not for female. It's only for men that attend this kind of course. The science courses are for men, so to speak. Engineering courses are for men. Those are old school, old stories. You need to walk away from those particular things. Then we must also create a platform for hearing workplace concerns. There must be individuals who we can go and speak to ensure mental health is well protected and ensure we have a work-life balance, fine, within the organization at that time. So we can all drive this process very, very well, as the case may be. So let me just take two more conversations and then we'll wrap up this our session today. You remember Lego? Lego from time have been encouraging both boys and girls to build with their blocks. That the Lego bricks are not designed for men only or for boys only. And most of their campaigns are designed consciously to ensure they drive that home. In fact, there was a program they launched that is called the Lego NASA Women, which was a design of some bricks designed for females to use to build the next NASA equipment, as the case may be. So it's something that we could copy and ensure we're able to do it. Matrix is another organization. It's a female-owned organization, mid-size manufacturer, as the case may be. In the particular report on Great Place to Work, the article says that women want to work for companies that are committed to equality for women. So we need to develop a clear diversity strategy and take note and broadcast that strategy. It's not enough to create a strategy or a practice in your organization, but you don't tout it. You must speak about it, engage about it. And one of the platforms where you can do this is on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, share all the things you do in order to ensure that you create a diverse and very stable environment for every team member to belong to at that point in time. If you're able to do this, then perhaps you will be able to create an inclusive workplace for everyone to live in. So finally, creating a more inclusive work environment requires us to engage people at every level within the organization. The executives must support the campaign, they must be present at various campaigns, and they must also live and behave in that particular area. It's not just about following diversity rules and policies, right? The policies are not enough. You must embrace a culture that makes them happen. And when we say embracing a culture that makes them happen, here is one. Embed an inclusive culture in your company's DNA. Become leaders in your community in this particular area. Your organization must stand out compared to everyone. Then you must also support and encourage employee resource groups. Create some resource groups that can support employees who are going through any of these challenges at this point in time. And then encourage people to bring their whole self to work. It is time to allow people to express themselves at work. Yeah, while it is necessary, there's a cultural code, there's the way we dress, the way we look in this particular environment. Create room for within it for people to be who they truly are, so that they can be more excited, more engaged, more innovative, more creative in getting their work done. And then ensure that our leadership are inclusive in their behavior, so that they recognize what they need to do in various areas in order to get this done at that point in time. So you could look at flexible work hours, economic workstations, maternity, paternity, leave, top-up programs, whatever it is that you can put in place in order to ensure that you are able to deliver these various things within your organization. This conversation can continue. We can continue to have this conversation. We can take a Q&A and discuss further in this particular session, as the case may be. But this is where we'll come to the end of this particular webinar. And thank you very much for your time. For you, consider what are the main takeaways that you can go back to your institution and begin to implement. What will make the difference? We've only touched, this is just a tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot to be said. You can start with a campaign. You can start with a training program across the organization and create awareness, all right? And any of such programs can help you to address the concern at leadership level, at managerial level, and at the employee level. But more especially at the middle level and also at the executive level. This is where most of the lack of inclusion happens within the organization. So I can bring to the table what is required to drive process at this point. Thank you very much for your time. I'll just hang on for another 1 minute or so to take any questions or feedback you have. Thank you, Adako. Thank you. So if you wish and you like us to talk about this more or deploy a little bit of it within your organization or run some awareness programs, feel free. We are just one phone call away, one email away, and we'll have a conversation in that particular area. And thank you, Adaku. I'm sure we'll reach out to you. There will be more in this area also.
All right, let me just quickly say, yes, thank you so much. And it's always good to have a brother. And by that, I mean is someone doing the DEI stuff, because sometimes we need the men. Sorry, I'm wearing my DEI hat now. So I like to see more men having this conversation. So yes, thank you so much for what you're doing. And I will definitely be in touch.